Alpha Team report.
What's happening, Heather?
Alpha Team isn't responding.
Bravo?
Still nothing.
You lost both teams? Get a grip on this operation, Heather. That's Bourne. Relight the asset.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Bourne.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every man should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is November 30th, 2016, the last day of November. Damn, time fucking flies, man. Already year's almost over. 31 days left until 2017. Starting to feel old, I guess. Well, I'm not that old, so. But thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights Tuesday through Thursday. For the time being, we are on at 6 o'clock Pacific. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. And assuming that works out okay, we'll probably stay at 6 and either go till 9 or, you know, stay at 2 hours at 8. It kind of gives me the flexibility to, if I need to go 3 hours, I can. And if I want to end at, you know, after 2 hours, I can do that as well. Because originally, you know, we had done the 3 hours and then cut down to 2 because I needed to get more sleep. And then last night I actually had done 3. So we'll play it by ear and see how that goes. But we'll definitely be starting at 6 o'clock until anything changes, and I'll definitely let everybody know via social media and the website. So so we're on the Nonpartisan Liberty for All media and radio network, which now runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can listen live on Spreaker.com and NonPartisanLibertyForall.com to the live stream and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and, of course, iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote self-ownership and the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. Speaking of that, I was looking at something about the Constitution this week and how many people signed it, and I believe it was 52, although Ken may have a different number. It's either 52 or 64. I believe it was 52, though, but we'll bring him on in a second, and he may know the exact number. But we're happy to hear from you. You can reach us via phone at 702-470-7664 if I hook my phone up. That's 702-470-7664. I can't remember the last time I actually got a call, but please feel free to call in. You know what it is the majority of listens are not live, which kind of sucks, because then it's like, you know, I could do the show and edit it and all that shit, but to me, that's not, I wouldn't have that real feeling to it, you know, that live feeling. I guess I could do live on tape, but I'd rather do it live and there are some people that listen live, so we really got to work on building that live audience there. But we've had a lot of listens over the last couple of shows, which is great. It's just they haven't been live listens. But anyway, we would love to hear from you either via phone or via Skype, username NonPartisanLibertyForall. And you can get all that information and more at NonPartisanLibertyForall.com. We have articles and blogs and all of that fun stuff, as well as all the contact information. If you forget the phone number, the username, if you want to email us, all of that is at NonPartisanLibertyForall.com, as well as the links to every site that we're on and the specific link. So as we do every other Wednesday, we have Ken Schortgen of the Daily Economist and the Ken Schortgen channel on YouTube, which the links are in the show description. And that show description actually shows not just in the event on Facebook, but in every place that the show is posted. So you could get that information directly. You know, the YouTube channel, I told Ken should change the name of the channel so it's like easy it change it to Ken Schortgen or something like that, but it's like, you know, the regular YouTube channel names like TW whatever, but I copied the link and put it in there, so you could just click on the link, or you could search for Ken Schortgen of the Daily Economist. So thanks as always, Ken, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, the reason it's Ken Schortgen is because the channel was originally created under an umbrella for Rogue Money, because I'm a contributor and board member of the RogueMoney.net site, and so they were trying to get everybody who's a contributor to have their own YouTube channel. So they created that for me. So that's why it's set up that way.
Well, I mean, the name, like you can have them go in and like if you go to your channel and you look at the name, it's just some like random system generated ID, basically.
Yeah, URL script.
Right. You can change it though to Ken Schortgen is what I mean. So that way you could say, YouTube, I think, /user/Ken Schortgen or whatever. Like I did that with my channel. So that's all I was saying. But I have whatever it was on the Facebook event, and the information in the Facebook event goes into the Spreaker posting, and then that is pushed to every other place it's posted. So
yeah, nine times out of 10, I really don't think about it because I don't link the entire URL. What I'll do is I'll hyperlink it to something else. So that's why I've probably been too lazy to get it done. In answer to your question, there were 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 56. And there were 34 signers of the Constitution.
Maybe, yeah, I was talking about the Constitution.
Yeah, you mentioned the Constitution. Now, there were 74 delegates who showed up, 55 who were primary, and 34 who signed. Because if you remember, in the Constitution, there was only 12 colonies, or 13 colonies. So that's all who had to sign anyway.
Maybe it was the Declaration of Independence. I can't remember. I was just looking up. I was going through quickly different things on YouTube, and well, at least I had the 52 and I said 46, so I had one number from each, but it wasn't a lot, put it that way, because I always say, I didn't sign the fucking Constitution. Even the majority of people at the time, the population was 7 million. So, 56 people. And they kind of did it in secret, the Constitution. They basically overthrew the government, sort of. Not technically they didn't, but they kind of did.
Really what they did is they established a government, and they rebelled against England because they were colonies.
Well, I'm saying I'm saying from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution.
Oh.
That they kind of overthrew the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah. Yeah, the Articles of Confederation had a number of good things that were important to state sovereignty, but the problem is that if everybody was an individual, then all Britain had to do was go beat on the most vulnerable one and kill it. And so you needed some sort of common defense, plus the fact that each of the different new states or colonies, they weren't states yet, colonies, all had different money. And so they weren't using a gold standard. They were all using paper money. And so it was really, you couldn't really do trade between the states very well.
Yeah, but I mean, it went deeper than that. And there was... And you're right, but that's why they did the Bill of Rights. But, right, I know. But it was still... Because I forget who I was listening to who was commenting and talking about... it was Larkin Rose, actually, who was talking about, though, you know, some of these guys... I mean, it's the same as... You know, now in a sense, I mean, people are people. Not every single one of these guys were really freedom fighters. Some of them wanted power. You know, you have guys like, I think Thomas Jefferson was sincere. I think Washington was a sincere guy in what, you know, I've read and whatnot. And especially the fact that they wanted him to be king. I mean, at least that's the story I heard.
Right.
You know, you would know.
They wanted him
more.
to be president for life,
right?
AKA king.
They basically wanted him to be king, and he said no, and he's the one who established the 2 terms. And then this fuck Roosevelt thinks he's so great that, you know, oh no, I'm going to be in there, you know, as long as I can. And
yeah, but you got to remember with Roosevelt though, they did have an election. The people just voted him in.
Yeah, but that's something that, you know, I was thinking about this today. You look at the last 3 presidents. They were all in there for 8 years. And the last 2, at least, were terrible. I mean, Clinton, you know, you could say from the standpoint of the economy, at least it seemed like he had improved the economy.
Yeah, but that whole thing was a farce because
but
under Bill Clinton, Greenspan was the head of the Fed,
right,
and he started lowering interest rates to expand the money supply. Well, back under Bill Clinton, the national debt wasn't really tremendous. You know, it was like $4 or $5 trillion. It wasn't like it is today, where it keeps doubling every administration.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So they lowered the interest rates, so there was more money, and of course, Wall Street said, "Oh boy." And it created the .com bubble.
Yeah, he created a lot of things. I mean, he got rid of Glass-Steagall. So, I mean, he did a lot of damage that affected things, I think, after the fact and set things. Yeah.
Some odd years.
So he did damage. I think that came up later, but during the time. So you could still say, I mean, basically he was a hick from Arkansas. I mean, he was pretty much selling cocaine. I mean, what the fuck?
I know. Here's the thing with Bill Clinton, though. The last year of George Bush Sr.'s term, okay, a hard recession had hit the first, you know, the last 6 months. That's really what kept him from winning.
Right.
Well, the first 6 months of Bill Clinton's thing, there was recession, and then the stuff that they had put in place to get out of the recession, then it kicked in, so it made it look like Bill Clinton was this, he got us out of the recession. No, the mechanisms were already in under the last 6 months of George Bush. It was Bill Clinton, though, that just reaped the benefits for doing nothing.
Right. Well, my point is that, and you know from the Senate, I mean, how long, you know, look at your state and John McCain. I mean, that once you get in there, that it's really hard to vote somebody out. And especially with Roosevelt, who was president during World War II. And I mean, this guy fucking, you know, I don't know if it was from his diary or what, but he hated Jews and had all these things to say about them.
Let me tell you something about Roosevelt.
He was a fucking socialist.
See, one of the reasons why, after, you know, in the 1930s, that blacks as a whole started voting Democrat, okay, was because of not FDR, his wife Eleanor. See, they played this juggling act. FDR, to make sure that he had the support of the South, the white South, he acted like, desegregation was fine. It was Eleanor Roosevelt who went out to the black communities, and people saw her as a shining star in the black communities, and so they equated her with FDR, and that's what really carried it over. And then, of course, Harry Truman was the first one to desegregate the military in 1946, and ironically, it was the Republicans who voted en masse to do the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Most of the Democrats voted against it.
Well, it's not ironic because the Republicans always used to be that way up until like the 60s. I mean, Republicans what really kicked it into gear was LBJ started the Great Society, so he just gave free stuff to everybody. Well, isn't he also the one who said, "Oh, we'll have these niggas voting, Democrat for the next 30 years"?
Yes, he did.
So I mean,
LBJ.
He was a fucking racist.
Here's the thing: is LBJ was as crooked as Hillary. Just before a week.
Well, I think he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. At least he knew about it.
The week after the Kennedy assassination, he was going to go up on charges in the state of Texas for this big land corruption deal. He was not going to be the vice president candidate. He was going to be out of office and go to jail. So it was perfect timing, that he had this, got this taken care of because those charges never came up.
A funny, this is kind of off topic, but how all they taped everything, all the calls in the White House, and unless probably it was, there were ones that were, I don't know if they're right, like the special whatever, but they played a call to his tailor on Howard Stern, and he was like, the way he talked, he's like, yeah, I don't want the thing that, I want it so it's loose in the buttocks and where my balls are. It was just a funny fucking call, and he has that accent and shit.
There was a political cartoon because he had surgery to getting his appendix out. And
was this while he was president?
While he was president, he got his appendix out, and then when he came back from the hospital and that, the press was all there, and he lifted up his shirt and showed where the scar was. So there was a political cartoonist who, in the place of the scar, drew a picture of Vietnam.
That's fucked up.
The other thing is there's a video of him out on his ranch. And he used to have a lot of beagles, and he was trying to, he always tried to be funny with everybody. So he just went and grabbed his beagles by the ears, picked them up off the ground.
That's really cruel.
Well, of course it is.
And this is a little off topic, but
he was also having sex with one of his interns, and his wife came in there, and he just kept on going and told her to get the F out.
Well, I mean,
this guy is
that
as
doesn't
crass
surprise me,
and
but
good as it came.
Most congressmen are fucking somebody. I mean, look, there's so many examples, and that's what we know of, But off topic, there's a lot to say about people that abuse animals, because I could never, and it's weird because I've said this on the air before. Like, you ever see that commercial about adopting animals, and it shows them in cages, and it plays like a sad song, and how they're basically going to be put to death if no one adopts them, and,
right?
And I cry when I see that commercial. But when I see the commercial of like the kids in Africa or in some other country, like, it doesn't bother me. Like, because you know why? Because people do fucked up shit, and animals are just, even if they do something bad, it's because they were taught to. It's just whatever. But my main point is that once you get elected, it's hard to get that person out.
Well, yeah, but there's a number of reasons why.
You have a huge advantage.
Well, a number of reasons why. The ones who stay in there forever, okay, they've got protection. They owe the lobbyists. The lobbyists are going to, they don't want to have to retrain a new person and pay them off and do the whole thing. So the amount of money that comes from an incumbent like John McCain is just overwhelming.
And this fucking guy's what, like 76 or 70? I mean, is he even older than that?
He's close to 80.
I mean, he could just fucking retire. Harry Reid, too, just finally, is out in January.
I think
he's like 78. He's been in politics since he was 30 or in his 20s. This guy is a multimillionaire. He's been a career politician. He's been corrupt since back in the days when he was on the fucking what do you call it? Remember the movie Casino? Like that character was based on him when Robert De Niro was yelling at you've seen Casino, right?
Right.
When he's yelling at the commission, the gaming commission. That was supposed to be Harry Reid, the Smothers brother. That was supposed to be based on Harry Reid. And I mean, he's been corrupt forever. Sorry, you were gonna say something there.
Oh yeah, there's a story about Harry Reid. His great uncle Remus Rodham was hung for stealing horses and train robbery in Montana in 1889.
Oh, figures. I mean, this guy is anybody who's a career politician has baggage. And now you got, of course, with the NSA, I mean, they can blackmail them, and it's all fucked up. But I mean, most politicians in general have baggage. I mean, most people in general, but I mean, it's not the type of baggage that these fuckers have. I mean, these guys are,
Well, no, in Nevada's got, especially Clark County. I mean, his son is in charge of the interior, and he gets tons of money from land deals.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, but like half of the county commission about, what was it, 7-8 years ago, went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
For doing illegal shit. Do you remember that? I mean, fucking, it's. You
remember the Cliven Bundy incident?
Oh, of course.
Where he was raised, just allowing his cattle to feed out on national land, which he'd done for decades. You know why Harry Reid had the.
He was outspoken about. He spoke out about that, and
because he had made a secret deal with the Chinese.
With the Chinese, I know,
to put solar panels out there.
Yeah,
that wasn't a federal government thing. That was he took money under the table to pawn off that land.
Yeah, and he had said. I remember playing clips of him, and the stuff that he had said was like he's a terrorist, and he said some really fucked up shit. And Harry Reid's
you know why he left office? He was told by the establishment, by the cartel.
Go?
Why do you think he lost his eye? They beat the crap out of him. He didn't do that in a boxing accident.
I didn't know he lost his eye.
They beat the crap out of him. He lost his eye, and he can't see out of it anymore. And that's when he decided to get out. No,
the establishment. He should have got out. He's fucking almost 80 years old. What are you doing?
Yeah, but what about Strom Thurmond, 102 years old?
You know what that shows? That you don't have to you could be anybody and be a congressman. You don't have to have any type of intelligence.
What it also shows is the argument you and I have back and forth about anarchy, freedom, and that. People could, if they took a little bit of responsibility and a little bit of effort, get people like that out of Congress. They choose not to. It's too easy. They're lazy. They're apathetic to just keep voting in the same people because they don't want to take the time to learn about the issues or learn about.
Yeah, but see, that's a contradiction because you also say that you agree that it's an oligarchy and that it's run by, a shadow government. So you can't have it both ways.
But look at what happened this year. And I'm not saying whether you like Trump or not, but look what happened this year. The media, the Congress, his own party, Soros, everybody was against Donald Trump. But guess what?
I believe it was
the
all
people
an act.
Change, and they voted him in.
I believe that it was still all rigged. And you'll see Trump already started backing off a lot of his policies already.
Yeah, but that's
he's hired the Secretary of Treasury is former Goldman Sachs,
and that's something we can bring up right now. I'm not going to say yay or nay whether Munchin is an establishment or not, but
I don't know enough. I don't know anything about him. All I know he's Goldman Sachs.
I did some history on him, and I'll go through that real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
But you've heard of Nomi Prinz, right?
Yeah, I know the name.
Nomi Prinz.
The name from?
She's like Ron Paul, radical libertarian, anti-Fed, credit and all that.
Yeah, but was she like a reporter?
She worked for Goldman Sachs as a managing director, and she worked for Bear Stearns before it went under.
Okay, she was a whistleblower then.
No, she just quit. But she wrote a book called All the President's Bankers.
Okay, I knew her name from. I'm just trying to place where I know her name from.
Right, but she was former Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
Have you heard about the billionaire Jim Rogers?
Name sounds familiar, but I don't.
Go out and if you go out to YouTube and listen to Jim Rogers is like on Ron Paul. He's anti-establishment. He's against the Fed. He's against all this. Jim Rogers worked as the direct partner. He was co-partner with George Soros in the Quant Fund 15, 20 years ago. Okay? It doesn't, just because you work for those places doesn't mean that you are a bought and sold that. Here's the thing about it, and the most important thing. I believe that one thing Trump wants to do is he's going to return to Glass-Steagall. This is going to break up the big banks. Glass-Steagall, what it did is it separated the commercial from the investment bank.
Right.
Well, Goldman Sachs, the only reason it became a bank in 2008 was so it could get money from the Fed.
And it was Clinton during the Clinton administration, and what's that guy's name who's been in and out of government
Graham.
Positions?
There was Phil Graham.
No, that's not who I'm looking for.
Howard Baker.
No, there's another guy.
John Paulson.
No,
Hank
what
Paulson.
was his name? I know who Hank Paulson is, but no, it's another guy I'm thinking of. But
Larry Summers.
Yeah, Reuben Summers.
Yeah. Reuben was the Treasury Secretary, and Larry Summers was an economic advisor.
Or Larry Summers. Yeah, Larry. Yeah. That's What are they? I'm assuming they're related.
No.
Not?
Larry Summers is now the president.
Larry Summers is who I was thinking of.
Yeah, Larry Summers is now the president of Harvard or Yale University.
But he was very involved in getting rid of Glass-Steagall.
Yeah, he was. Back then. Anyway, Glass-Steagall separates commercial banks. Well, the too big to fail banks have so much insolvency, right? They haven't been lending since 2008. They get all this money from the Fed, and they're not lending it out to small business. They're not lending it to whatever. If Glass-Steagall gets put in and everything gets separated, the too big to fail banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, they are not going to want to get involved in commercial banking. They're going to want to, because they're so over leveraged on their investment side. Who is that going to leave to do the lending? It's going to be the regional banks. Okay, the mid-tier regional banks like BMO, Bank of Montreal, BB&T. There was one called Three-Fifths Bank or something like that. These are the regional banks. Well, here's why Munchin. One of the potentials, the reason why Munchin was in there. Munchin originally started with Goldman Sachs. Then he worked for a hedge fund with George Soros. But over the last 10 to 15 years, he's been working with regional banks like OneWest and IndyMac. Okay? So he is going to be part of the transition after Glass-Steagall gets back in there to try to get, raise up the regional banks, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be doing these infrastructure projects. They're going to be lending to small business and try to build up, American industry. The too big to fail banks, Trump and that doesn't want anything to do with. They want them to just, fade away. The second thing is this, okay? You've been seeing what's been going on with the recall or the recount vote, right? With Jill Stein.
Yeah.
And you notice that even, Obama's come out and said, hey, the vote was done. That's how our system works. Nobody wants to touch Jill Stein with a 10-foot pole, except Hillary's, Hillary's campaign counsel,
well,
who happens to be
I know she's pretty unattractive, but you know.
I know. But here's the interesting thing. There was a lawyer for the Hillary Clinton's campaign who jumped in and said, we're going to sign on with that. By the way, you know who he's also a lawyer for? George Soros. So that's who's funded. See, Jill Stein.
Yeah, well, they had said that basically the funding is coming from Hillary because it's double what she even raised for her campaign.
Yeah, exactly. And see, this whole thing, okay, this whole thing, Trump is not president. There's still 3 steps to go. Anything can happen. And do you think the establishment and the oligarchy is going to go down quietly? Not really.
Not. But
so if you put in, see, all these appointees for these cabinet positions, they're not really there yet. They're just in figurehead because half of them have to be confirmed by Congress. So if Trump wants to make sure that he's smooth through the electoral process on December 19th, then on January 3rd, Congress gets the electoral votes and declares the winner, and then on December 21st, he takes office. Don't you want to sort of make it look like you're going along with the establishment at least a little bit so that they're going to be on your side and not try to kill you or try to, end it before it begins?
Well, I mean, you could say that's the reason and whatever. But bottom line is, it doesn't matter who the person is as far as I'm concerned. And I've said this before. It's the institution of government I have a problem with. I don't want anybody ruling over me because somebody happens to be, he's a nice ruler, so that's okay. If we vote this guy in, that's okay. You still have no say in government. You still have, all of these laws that basically affect your daily life. And it's going to be like that, whether Trump's in there or somebody else is in there. I don't want government. Now, I know you have a different view, and that's fine. But my view is that I do not want a government, period. I do not want people ruling over me. I do not want a group that has a monopoly over the majority of things in society, whether they're good people or not good people. And again, I mean, obviously it has failed. And this fucking obsession with Trump, not with you, because you're being more rational about it, because I've heard, even on your podcast, you're kind of like, well, I think this, but it might not work out or whatever. But, you have people, Alex Jones, who's gone nuts over him, and all of these people that are just like, Trump's the fucking Jesus Christ. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I don't think anything is going to really change, at least for now. He might do some things that might make some people happy. I'm not saying that maybe he'll bring some jobs back or something. But as far as what I feel, not only about government, but just freedom and, self-ownership and being able to, he's not going to legalize all drugs. He's not going to.
No, but remember this: the problems you had, early on over there in Nevada with the cops and the courts and all that.
Well, I didn't have problem. It had nothing to do with drugs.
Oh, no, I'm not saying with drugs. I'm just saying the problems you had with the cops and the courts.
That was just cop
that.
harassment.
I
got arrested for a bullshit, obstruction of a police officer.
I'm not denying, worrying about that. I'm not worrying about the details or semantics.
Right.
What I'm saying is that was state level. That had nothing to do with the federal government.
Well, I realize that.
Okay. Yeah, so
but
there are certain things.
Well, wait, though.
Put under the guise of government.
I will say this though, that the militarization of police and the training of police, the federal government in the past, say, 10 years or since 9/11 has been very involved.
Right.
So it didn't have to do with the federal government directly, but the mentality of police has been influenced heavily by the federal government.
No, and that I'll absolutely agree. By the way, I don't know if you've seen that. There's a lot of scuttlebutt because until Trump actually takes the presidency, you really can't say yay or nay. I mean, he's going to dinner with Mitt Romney, yet Kellyanne Conway is going on to talk shows and saying that, hey, the supporters of Trump don't want Romney and they despise him and hate him and that. Right. Well, it's kind of interesting that you would think that publicly she's undercutting him, but in politics there is so much. It's a game, right?
I realize that.
It's a game of deception, it's a game of lies, it's a game of cover-ups, it's a game of projecting yourself, whatever. My thing is this: in the long run, my thing is this: what is Trump most well known for from his reality TV show?
Firing people.
Bingo!
I know. I totally understand where you're coming from and your point of view on it. And I'm just using that to say, well, look, he's already doing this. Now, that might be irrelevant later, but I still believe that in the big scheme of things, there might be some things that might change, but in the big scheme of things, nothing's really going to change.
Right, but here's something else. I was listening to an interview today with...
at least not for the good. Now, things might change where we have less freedom, I think is going to keep going that direction. But nothing's going to change for when it comes to freedom and more rights and stuff like that.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
It's interesting you say that because there was somebody from the alt media wrote today about...
the alt-right?
Well... the alt media and the alt right are two different things. Okay. The alt right is a political thing.
Right. I did a show on them yesterday, and they're, I don't know how much you know about them, but they're a bunch of whacked out fucking people. And I did a lot of research from them, and everything I got was from them. I didn't turn on fucking government media and listen to them. Everything I got was from the alt right. And their stuff and their radio stations but I see what you're saying. You're talking about alternative media as
right,
opposed to government, what I call government, mainstream, whatever.
Right. Alt-right, and alt-right to me would be like Tea Party. Neocon would be establishment. Then
you should look at the alt-right. I mean, they're white nationalists. Admittedly.
Okay, so you're talking going way alt-right on the spectrum.
No,
okay.
I mean alt-right itself. I mean, there's not levels of alt-right, despite what people may say.
Yeah, there is. If you take a look at
there is not in my what I looked at, and I looked at a lot that alt-right. Regardless of what, you have that one guy, or the people at Breitbart, but they're not alt-right. They supposedly may be sympathetic to alt-right, but from what I understand, they're not alt-right because they're not. I mean, the alt-right are literally, and they'll tell you this, they're white nationalists. That's what they are.
Correct.
They believe that, they go really far. They believe that this country belongs to white people. It belongs to white Christians. And they're not dangerous, I would say, or I wouldn't even, to me, they're kind of a joke. But they're not violent or they're not going to do anything, they're basically Nazis without the violence and without the what's the word I'm looking for, what they did, the genocide.
What are you saying, fascists?
No, genocide. They're not. They don't want to commit genocide and get rid of people. They're just separatists.
Right.
But their political beliefs are more national social. I mean, they're a lot of their ideas are socialist, and they'll even say that. So I don't even know why they call them right, but they're very similar to National Socialism. If you actually, and that's, again, from the guys that are from the alt-right. I mean, the leaders of the alt-right.
Now remember this. I wrote a thing over at Rogue Money maybe a month and a half ago. Communism, socialism, even, Nazism, these are not actually political ideologies. These are, they're not considered political things like
they're more economic.
Well, what they are is more
socialism.
They're more ideologies of individuals. Think about this: has there ever been a truly communist state ever in the history of the world? No.
Well, because they're all. I mean,
they're oligarchies of a few individuals who control all the power. And
that's pretty much every type of
ideology. They use the economic thing of controlling the means of production.
Else.
Right. Pure communism, according to Marx, means there is no government. The people own everything. You say you drive a car to work. Okay. In pure communism, you would leave the keys there, and if somebody walked up, they could take the car and go where they want. There's no ownership.
Yeah, there's no private property. There's everything that would be done, every policy everybody would have to make a vote. And that's what the leftist anarchists are for. Well, they're more for they believe in some private property, but they're more for like when it comes to business, they want all co-ops.
Right.
I actually had a discussion with someone who was they did believe in private property, like you can own, your computer or your clothes or whatever, your car, but they were more over to
they wanted
the middle. They were more of a center. But yeah, they
material goods
exactly.
Material goods don't matter, but means of production, like determining how much wages are, how much things are going to be produced, cost of it, things like that. Yeah.
And speaking of that, there was another, I saw in North Carolina, there was another protest of the $15 an hour. And did they pass that in Arizona? I heard they were going to pass something like that in Phoenix.
They didn't pass the $15 an hour. They passed a $12 an hour, and it's going to be put in over like 3 years.
See, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I don't believe in any minimum wage, of course, because I believe in total free markets. And I believe that if you want to protest, they should be protesting the business, not the government.
Well, see, the problem is that ignorant people can't equate what a salary or wage is. Okay? A salary or wage is the amount of value you provide to a business.
Exactly, but they don't base it on that. They want the living wage that says,
so somebody with no skills who can flip a burger deserves as much as somebody who can program a computer.
No.
See that, and see, the problem is the McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's, they sell burgers for say $3.50. Big Mac.
Well, I think you can get the cheapest one, like the double for maybe like $1.30 or something.
Right, but I'm doing the average.
Okay,
so $3.50. And they've got,
they've gone way up.
8 people on the line, whether they're flipping the fries or they're flipping the burgers or they're wrapping the packages or whatever. Say they got 8 people on the line. So if you're paying them $15 a piece, 8 people, that's 80 and 40, that's $120 an hour. That means at $3.50 they need to.
They're not going to make money. They're going to have to either
40 burgers.
Right. They're either going to have to up the price, or what they're going to do is go to automation, and we know that with all these robots and stuff like that are coming out, all the technology. They don't understand that basically that what's going to happen is they're going to end up not having jobs at all, or it's gonna have a whole effect, or their money's not gonna be worth as much.
Now you just you just hit the kicker.
Yeah,
it's never been about minimum wage. It's been about inflation because of a devalued currency,
and it will devalue, the currency basically. And then what will happen is everybody else will have to get a raise, or they're at least feel that they deserve one. So if they're saying, hey, people at McDonald's, if they were making $7 an hour, now they're making $15. Well, what about the people that make $15 an hour and they're like, what the fuck? I'm making the same amount as somebody that works at, McDonald's. Now I should make more money. And, it all depends on how they handle the situation. But I mean, without technology, if it goes to, okay, well, the price goes up, then basically everything just goes up and you have the inflation and everything pretty much stays the same. You know,
right.
It's just you get paid more, but then everything costs more, and it doesn't make a difference. But you have these people that believe, and I think we've talked before about positive and negative freedoms, that their entitlement, they're being the progressives are trying to redefine the meaning of freedom. And to them, the meaning of freedom are things like you have the right to a living wage. You have the right to free health care. You have the right to not be shot, so guns should be banned. Like, that's what they consider freedoms, which are positive freedoms, which you don't have a right to. You're not born with you're not born with that right, and there's no natural right to any of those things, because those involve forcing other people and really forcing them at the point of a gun. And I know it's not directly a gun aimed at them, but if you're in business, what happens if you don't pay those people that wage? Well, they're going to put you out of business. And if you resist, they're going to physically come there and shut down your fucking business.
Yeah, see, this is the thing, okay? You drop out of high school, you don't bother to go learn a skill, then nature, these are wages then are like the laws of nature. If you're an animal in the wild and you get separated from your crew and you go live on your own, you know what? You're gonna be attacked, you're gonna be killed, and that's that. It's the same thing with it's like wolves. If a wolf has has been hamstrung and can't go get its own food, then the pack kills it.
Well, I definitely believe it's harder now to be successful, but besides the internet, take away the internet, and it's harder because the government has, by making all these regulations with corporations and things like that benefit corporations and make the barriers to entry in a lot of businesses now are so much harder than they used to be because of the government. So I do believe the government has made it harder to be successful outside of the internet. Now, the internet, basically, you can do anything on there, and if you have a good idea, the barriers to entry are pretty easy, right? But I do believe that. But at the same time, for wherever you're at, you're responsible for that. You can't blame, you can blame whoever the fuck you want. But there's people, there's stories of people and what they've went through. And I have a lot of things that I've went through that, I always thought I was in the middle, and then I've heard all these people that didn't go through that much. I don't know. Maybe I'm towards the bottom, but not at the bottom. But maybe I'm in between the middle and the bottom. I don't know. I'm somewhere in there, and I didn't let that stop me from becoming somewhat successful and going to college and whatever. I was told, I'm going to be nothing. I'm never going to do anything with my life. I told my father my plan, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to transfer to the school I wanted to transfer to, Emerson College, which is a very good communication school. It was actually ranked like a B in the college book, whatever. Henry Winkler went there, Jay Leno, I think he dropped out, Dennis Leary. It's a really good school for communications. It's not UCLA, but it's good. So I couldn't get in without going to community college first. But point being that I had to sacrifice. I worked full-time, went to school full-time. I didn't have the support of my parents. Now, they let me live there. That was about it. So, and there's so many other things that went on that I'm not even going to get into. But point being is that if I'm not where I want to be in my life, I could sit and blame all these fucking people. I could blame people at work, or I could blame my parents, or I could blame whatever. But when it comes down to it, it's my responsibility. And if you're not where you're at, it's your responsibility. You got to put that on yourself. Yes, there are going to be hard things and, that you have to work through. But, when it comes down to it, there are so many people who have overcome, these odds to get where they're at. And, you know, it might be hard. It's not like it was for, you know, in some ways I say it's harder, but what about the people, you know, in the before the Industrial Revolution that didn't have all the modern conveniences we have? I mean, we don't have a hard life in that sense. And, you know, and the people that sacrifice just for their kids, where they work their ass off just so their kids, and I'm talking about, you know, years and years ago, so their kids could be the first generation to go to college, or people that come over from other countries that are here 10 years and then own a fucking 7-Eleven because they made those sacrifices for those 10 years and saved up the money to be able to do that. So this whole fucking entitlement society that's being built, and it's coming from government influence as far as I'm concerned, and that whole philosophy is a bunch of bullshit. You're not owed anything. When you're born, you're not owed anything. The only exception I make is, okay, from your parents, you know, to take care of you as an infant. But, I mean, there's arguments that, you know, about that as well. I mean, they could just give you up or whatever. But you understand where I'm going, and I'm sure you agree with most of what I'm saying as well.
Oh, yeah. And see, that's the kicker is, here's the interesting thing. When you do have some control and freedoms to make choices,
you have enough. At least I see that diminishing, right. But you have
the state doesn't
enough.
Force you. You know, this isn't the state doesn't force you to choose a major. You know, in
right.
college, the state doesn't force you to get a particular job like right. in the old Soviet Union.
I think that at some point that may change, but as of now, no, they don't. So you do right. still have certain choices that you can make, and if you're working, you know, at McDonald's or one of these minimum wage jobs, you know, you have to ask yourself, well, why, and why aren't I doing something to better myself or advance myself or whatever, you know, and they forget about the fact that raising the minimum wage, all that does is help corporations, because as a whole, they end up making more money long term because it gets rid of the small businesses.
It's like with raising taxes. Okay. You raise the sales tax. Do you think the business is going to eat that sales tax? No, they're going to raise the price on everything.
Right. But what I'm saying is, when they pay people more money, not only will they raise prices, but at the same time, they'll be able to put their competition that can't afford it out of business.
Right.
So,
and the other thing, real quick, that when you move up to the minimum wage $15, guess what? You no longer get some of your benefits because you've moved out of a certain income level. And in the end, they will lose.
The tax rate goes up too.
Well, the tax rate, yeah, but they will lose. Say like you're a single mother with 2 kids, and you're working at McDonald's or wherever for $8 an hour,
and you end up paying
no
taxes or something, and you get
right.
the benefits of that.
And you're getting food stamps, and you're getting Section 8 housing benefits, whatever.
Yeah, that goes.
Now all of a sudden you get $15 an hour. Guess what? You lose the Section 8 housing, and your food stamps are cut in half.
Well, I don't think those should exist neither.
Taxes, and since you're paying more taxes, in the end, your net income is going to be less than if you did that. See, people don't take into consideration, because most of those who are out there protesting, they just follow the herd.
Well,
somebody leaves them out there, and they don't even know what they're protesting for.
It's like the example of Black Lives Matter, where if you read their demands, it's definitely funded by, you know, people that aren't even black. It's a socialist movement, and if you actually read it, you can tell that it's progressives that put all this shit in that has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. Like even climate change was in there. You know what I'm saying? So what they're doing is they're exploiting people to push a political agenda. And they're doing the same thing with all of these quote unquote movements, whether it's to hire the minimum wage or whatever. You have people that are, you know, leading these, that are investing money into them to exploit these people to push their agenda. And that's what it is with most of these fucking movements.
You know, and the thing is, it's never changed. Do you remember an activist from the 60s named Jerry Rubin?
That wasn't the guy from Grateful Dead. No, that's Jerry Garcia.
No. No, Jerry Rubin was a social activist, anti-war leader, counterculture icon of the 60s and 70s.
No, before my time.
He's quoted as saying during the revolution, you know, the hippies and the counterculture and the social change of the 60s,
yeah.
He's quoted as saying there are intermediaries, long hairs, who work directly with the businessmen, the corporate businessmen, and the millionaires, because they're funding this thing.
Yep.
So the corporations were funding the counterculture.
They're funding, just like they're funding Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. You know, Soros and those people. I know his name always gets thrown out there, but it's not just him. It's they're all funding these things, but they're not funding it for the same reason neither. They're not funding it because they give a shit about black people or they give a shit about people getting killed by police or any of that. They're funding it so they can use it to exploit it for their agenda. And that's why in their document you have things about the gay and lesbian community. You have things about, like I said, climate change. You have all this shit that has nothing to do with people getting killed by police. You know what I mean? It's a progressive agenda in a document. That's what it is. And it's obvious. But some people just ignore that.
Oh, exactly.
And speaking of that, I don't know if this is something that you want to talk about, but this does have to do with geopolitics. So Fidel Castro died. Was it this week or last week? What was it? It might have been Monday. Was it
over
Monday?
The weekend? Yeah, I think.
Or Sunday. So I mean, his brother had taken over anyway, Raul,
right?
Who I didn't realize that. You know, he was involved from the beginning with Che Guevara, and I didn't know a lot about him, who was another, you know, communist. But, and of course, Castro, you know, said, I'm going to bring freedom to the people and all this bullshit. And I know Batista, who was the former leader, who was friends with, you know, people from the mafia, like the scenes in Godfather were based on true events. And, you know, he was corrupt and stuff like that, but, you know, and friendly to America. So it was easy for him to kind of present that to the people. But what I look at, you know, if you've seen some of these tweets from celebrities and stuff like that, who I went to right away was Andy Garcia, because Andy Garcia was born in Cuba, okay? And I went to see what Andy Garcia said. And, of course, he didn't have anything positive to say about Castro. You want to know the truth, you know, don't go to the fucking Hollywood or the government media. Talk to the Cubans who have come over from Cuba, and they'll tell you how bad it was.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, you know, and for all these idiots who you know, like your fanboy Kaepernick. Kaepernick, when he was doing his kneeling thing, was wearing a Fidel Castro shirt.
Well, it was Malcolm. It was a picture with Malcolm X and Castro, but yeah.
So, yeah, and so you know, after Castro died, he came out and gave, you know, a reporter stuck a mic in his thing. Oh, Fidel Castro was a great guy. You know, this for the people. Dude. Fidel Castro, if he was so great, then why were so many people wanting to get away in boats to come to Miami? And Fidel Castro would take his own gunships out there and fire on the boats and drown everybody.
Yeah, you couldn't legally leave the country.
Yeah, if the people were so enamored about it, Why are you restricted to the place? And to tell the truth, per capita, he killed more people than Adolf Hitler did. Because
I was looking at some of those stats.
He killed 100,000 people out of a population of about 2 million. So you're talking 10%, 5% of your entire population you just mass murdered. When you're talking 6 million out of 190, 200 million in the course of all the different countries that he did, he killed the Jews out of all the countries in Europe. No, Fidel Castro was a mass murderer, genocide guy of the biggest order.
And from what I understand, Raul was associated with the KGB. Raul Castro, his brother.
Yeah, he was Raul Castro was the intermediary between the Soviet Union and that. And I think Raul Castro, here's the thing, it gets to a certain point. The past is past. And you know what, I respect the Jews when they have remembrances of the Holocaust. But the problem is that if your life is tethered to trauma and things of the past, then you can never move forward.
True.
It's not that you forget these things. It's just they don't rule your life. And
right. Well, I think you should. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I think you should learn from them and make sure that they don't repeat themselves. But I mean,
exactly.
That's about it.
Exactly. The people in New York City with 9/11. You do your best, but life is not perfect. You cannot stop everything and anything from happening. The point is though with Cuba, we could sit there and whether it's the government or whether it's the Cuban people exiled in Florida, they could sit there and make this this hatred of the Castros last their entire lives, and they could tell their grandkids about it, and they could just carry it on in their genes for centuries. Or they could realize that the turmoil of the 1960s and the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Cold War, those days are done. Why not let bygones be bygones and just try to mend fences and cause change through economics versus change through politics?
Right. Well, I mean, I didn't believe in the whole embargo and getting involved in any of. I don't believe in the United States really getting involved in anybody's affairs, to be honest. If somebody attacks the United States, okay, fine. But besides that, they've built this underground empire by invading everybody else. But I mean, even with Cuba, with the embargo and all of that, and you couldn't go there. And hey, if people want to go there, then fucking they should be allowed to go there.
Hey, by the way, if you do some research on Castro, where in the hell did Castro get the money to buy off the military to allow him to do his coup anyway? It wasn't the Soviet Union.
I believe I know that because
it's a 3-letter agency.
Oh yeah, the CIA.
There you go.
Right, I forgot. The CIA was supporting Castro through all that.
They funded Castro to do the revolution.
Right,
you know
they
why?
did.
Because they wanted Cuba to become the spark that created World War III for the bankers. End of story.
Yeah, it's crazy, and they've done that with so many countries, even especially in South America. They even tried to get rid of Chavez in like 2002, and they were unsuccessful.
Yeah, in 2002, but later they were able to poison him.
But because I was listening to an interview with a guy who he called himself. He wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Right.
So first, you go the money route. You offer them money to do what you want them to do. Then that's when they go to, okay, the CIA ops to get rid of them. And then, if all that shit doesn't work, then a lot of times they'll go, start a war with them. But they first start at trying to buy them off. But it's, America is so fucked up in that sense that they've done such a great job at doing it because they've created an empire in a way that your average person would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because as opposed to, say, the Roman Empire, or even Hitler, just invading countries and taking them over. And, of course, who funded Hitler? A bunch of people from the U.S. Same thing. A lot of these things couldn't have happened if it wasn't for these backers. I mean, everything needs funding, and whether it's the CIA or billionaire elites or whatever, if we're even these movements like we were talking about earlier, if we're hearing about them, it's usually because some billionaire's funding it. If you get that big that you're national news and you're some movement, about probably 95% of the time, it's because you're being funded by somebody else.
Absolutely.
And it's all controlled. It's all bullshit. I don't know. So let's get into some of the stuff that you had brought up. And some of it we talked about previously, but the progress on it because it seems to be advancing. So India, we had talked about them moving towards a cashless society and how one of the things you had brought up on your show, I mean, we talked about it the last time you were on as well, but is India is like the last country to do something like that because of all the cash that's used.
Oh, yeah, 98% of all transactions in their entire economy is done with cash.
Like Canada, they talked about, someone was saying like 60% or something, or 40% are with cards. So,
Actually, the best comparison or diametrically opposed comparison is like Denmark or Holland. In those places, Denmark and Sweden, they are looking to eliminate cash because 98% of all their transactions right now are electronic. In India, 98% is done with cash. So I used the comparison earlier in my podcast of the Soviet or Russia becoming communist. Because if you actually read the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, Russia was the last place that should have ever gone communist. You know why? Because they weren't a capitalist system. They were a controlled authoritarian economy under the Tsar. Communism is supposed to be a phase that occurs when capitalism reaches a corrupt state where the people take over the means of production and boom. No, the communist revolution in Russia had nothing to do with the economy or the people. It had to do with Lenin wanting power and Stalin, an administrator, seizing power and then controlling every means of production. The people had no say. So what with India is like trying to make that a cashless society is the equivalent of taking an authoritarian government and then changing it to communism when you bypass and skip capitalism. No, the way that you do that in India is if you want to get people off cash is then you back your currency with gold and people will be more feasible to accept it. But they don't trust their government to begin with. They definitely don't trust their money. And so when you try to take the money from the people, I don't know if you saw this on Zero Hedge. It came out this evening. Let me find it here real quick. But the people did revolt. Angry mobs lock up Indian bankers as cash chaos soars. So they're already going after the bankers.
So Sorry, in India?
Yeah, in Mumbai, angry mobs just broke into the banks, grabbed the bankers, and locked them up.
Oh, Jesus. So, I mean, how?
Yeah, listen to this. This is a quote. Already, people who are frustrated are locking branches from the outside in Pradesh, Bihar, and Nadu, and abusing staff as enough cash is not available. The group bankers have sought police protection at bank branches for the next 10 days.
Damn. So why are they? Who's really behind this?
Well, here's the problem. Modi, when he became prime minister late last year, the previous government had done a huge import duty on gold. Okay. Because they wanted to because if people are putting all their money and consumers are putting all their money in gold, then you really have no velocity of money. It's like putting all your money in a savings account and never spending it. The economy grinds to a halt. So if people are just buying gold, then their thought was, let's take away their incentive to buy gold. Well, it didn't work because they started smuggling in 300 tons of gold over the course of the last year.
Right, we had talked about that they banned the import of gold or something.
No, they didn't ban it. They put a 10% duty import, so it was costing them 10% more than the spot price. And so jewelers were not being able to buy as much, and so there wasn't enough jewelry for the wedding season and the holiday season. And you got to remember too, India has over 100 million gods in Hinduism.
Oh yeah.
So
they have a lot.
Think of how many religious holidays they have, which are all gold. So the problem, the thing is that people do most of their transactions with cash. Well, what is it? The key thing with cash, the government can't tax it. The government can't monitor it. The government can't control it. So if 98% of your stuff, your transactions are being done on the street, they declared that was black market. You know, if I went to my neighbor's garage sale and bought something, that would be considered black market.
But how do they? I mean, if you're already at 98% of the people doing cash transactions, how do you expect to move that to cashless society?
Well, what they thought they would do is first they eliminated the two highest denominated bills, the 500 rupee and the 1,000 rupee. Right, and you know what they're equivalent of? The 500 rupee is worth $7 US. The 1,000 rupee is worth 14. That's their highest bill.
That's crazy.
You know? So people had tons of them.
Having big pants with big, huge pockets.
Exactly. So they wanted to get rid of the highest denominated bills. So if people wanted to do cash transactions, they had to have like stacks and stacks and stacks of the 10 and 20 rupee bills, and which wouldn't be feasible. So it would sort of like try to force them to put their money in the bank and start using digital currency. Well, when you get a people who don't trust their government, don't trust their money to begin with, they trust gold. And then all of a sudden you're going to get them on a digital system. What do you think? That they're not stupid? You know, more PhDs come out of India than here in the United States. They're not stupid. So they would suddenly see, okay, the government's all digital system. Well, then they can impose whatever capital controls on me I want. If you're a anti-government, then they'll just shut off your card. That type of stuff. You know, they're not dumb.
I had talked to all about, and I think we had talked a little about it as well, as, what the possibilities are of having a cashless society relating to what government can do, besides tracking. They can turn it off. They can, maybe have a chip in it to locate you. I mean, there's so many different fucking things. So,
well, here's something else they
could take your money if they want.
When they eliminated the bills, what they also did is they also capped withdrawals at 10,000 rupees per person per day.
And what's that in U.S.?
About $60. Okay, now if you're only able to take the equivalent of $60 out per day, which people can go through. You fill your tank of gas, you buy lunch. There's your $60. If people can only take that much out of the bank today, here's a country of 1.3 billion people. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to be standing in line at the ATM or the bank teller for hours every single day. What does that do to production? The workers are all standing in line trying to get out their $60. And they're doing that every day. So economic production's gone down to, nothing.
So there's nobody behind the leader of India that's
well. You got to know that he's being persuaded by the powers that be, the cartel,
to be the.
But the thing about it is, think of this. What has been one of the biggest coalitions that is anti-dollar and pretty much a enemy of the U.S. control over the global financial system? The BRICS, right? Well, what happened in Brazil? They got Rousseff, the leader of Brazil. They got her impeached for a crime she didn't commit. They just trumped up charges, rabble-roused the people, and put in a guy who's hold on a second. A guy who's pro-Western and pro-dollar. Well, in South Africa, they've totally destroyed the economy. So South Africa is going through turmoil.
Yeah, I know that South Africa.
Now they're going after India. They tried to go after Russia with sanctions. But the one that they can't is China because it's just too big. But they have attacked the BRICS. And this is what they're doing now is they're going after India. They got Modi in, who's their man. And now he's trying to get them to give up their gold. He's trying to get them to fall in line with the digital cashless society, and there's going to be civil war.
It's just, it's bad enough what the country does to the people that live here, but what's done to other countries, and that the U.S. is always involved in. Usually, the leader of is just crazy.
Yeah, but you got to remember, it's not necessarily just the U.S.
No, I know it's a coalition.
The banker cabal goes outside of borders.
Right. No, I know, but it's usually if you're talking about them using organizations like the CIA, I know they'll use multiple organizations, but usually it seems like the U.S. is kind of the leader on a lot of these things.
Yeah, they've been put into that mode,
which is just crazy because it's like, I don't give a fuck about you or what happens to any of your people or whatever. It's just about our interests. It doesn't matter if we kill a bunch of people or whatever. And I'm saying them saying, speaking as them. It doesn't matter what happens as long as we get what we want. That's just, it's fucked up. And most people don't seem, I don't know if it's that they don't know. I think that's part of it, but I don't think they really care. It's just what happens.
Well, here's something I was going to mention about Trump too. And this is occurring and going to occur. Why we're seeing, people like Larry Summers and Ken Rogoff over at Harvard and India and all these wanting to get rid of cash. The powers that be know that the system is on the verge of collapse. They kicked the can in 2008. They never solved the underlying problems.
Right.
They just made them bigger. And Trump talked about the bubble, the bond bubble, and the economic crash that's coming during his campaign. He knows it. For all the idiotic things he can say, he says, the dude is not stupid. But the problem is the crash going to come sooner or later? Perhaps one of the reasons why Trump put in a Goldman Sachs guy, especially one who's dealt with, as a regional bank and worked with Fannie and Freddie Mae, is because he needs somebody who knows the system, because either it's going to crash in a short while and you've got to create something out of this. Now, Munchin is one guy, Goldman Sachs, whatever. I don't know if you had a chance to see the guy he interviewed 2 nights ago by the name of John Allison?
No.
John Allison was the CEO of BB&T Group, which owns their primary flagship is BB&T Bank, a regional bank, and then it has a number of others. John Allison has gone out publicly and talked about the need to go back to a gold standard and to end the Fed. He is like a banker Ron Paul. And Trump did an interview with him. There's a very good chance that he's going to have a position in the administration, either as Deputy Secretary of the Treasury or Economic Advisor, whatever, because I think in the long run, what Trump wants to do is get this to a point that it's going to crash, and then transition, use the rubble of the crash to transition back into a gold standard, or some type of end the Fed and Treasury starts printing money. That is one way to do it. The powers that be want to simply eliminate cash, go to a completely digital system so that they can print, ones and zeros to infinity and not have somebody audit them. So there's two schools of thought going on right now in the world. There's the those who are going for end of cash, and then there's the people who are looking to want to go to a sound money or gold.
Well, that would be the right way to go, obviously, because
well, you're right. But here is why the Brexit took place, why Trump got elected despite all odds, why in Italy this weekend, Sunday, for anybody who wants to watch, the Italian referendum is going to shape the Eurozone as well as Italy, as well as potentially bring about the next banking crash. Okay? The referendum is if they vote no to reform the government, then Renzi's going to step down. They're going to have spot elections, and right now the alt-right political party of Beppe Grillo is going to take over, and he is anti-Euro, anti-EU, anti-immigration, strong borders, sovereign. That's one. That's Italy. Right now in Austria, the number one candidate in the polls is a guy named Norbert Foslow, I think, or something like that. He is anti-immigration, strong borders, anti-EU. We have, who else is it? There's 2 others. Oh, Marine Le Pen, alt-right, get out of the euro, get out of the Eurozone, is leading the polls in France. And then, of course, there's another election. Oh, I forget who is up. Oh, Sweden, Geert Wilders. You want to talk about a guy who's like hates Muslims, national socialist, white supremacist, whatever. He's leading them in Sweden. Okay, so the world is changing. And when you have,
I wouldn't necessarily look at that as a positive thing.
No, wait, I didn't say positive. You notice I never said positive. In the course of change, a frequency shift, the outcomes can be positive or they can be negative. Think about 100 years ago. After World War I, we had a major depression in Europe. And what rose out of that depression? In the 1920s, it was Mussolini. In Spain, it was Franco. In Germany, it was Adolf Hitler. Okay? Change does not necessarily mean a good outcome. People in difficult times will accept any charismatic person who will promise them to get them out of a certain thing.
Right. Well, that's kind of what happened with Obama, in a sense, where it was just change. I mean, nobody knew what fucking change would be. It would be hope and change. Okay, well, we're sick of Bush and wars and whatever, so we want some change. They didn't really give a fuck what change. They just voted for fucking Obama.
Right, but if people were paying attention, the frequency shift started about when Obama, his election. Because what happened leading up to what we have now in the United States? In 2009, we had Occupy Wall Street. In 2010, 2011, we had the rise of the Tea Party. In 2011, we had the Arab Spring. In 2000... Oh, what was the most recent one? Oh, in 2012, we had the Ron Paul Revolution. You see what I'm saying? The frequency shift, people didn't have to know. They couldn't put a finger on it, but change was coming.
Yeah, but just change for the sake of change is, you're talking about people that are not having are getting enough information that they're just, we need change for the sake of change. And it's happened all through history.
But it's not needing change. It's a natural thing. Every 100 years in about the second decade, think about it. In 1770 or 1714, you had the Spanish Succession, which had an immense effect on the New World. In 1805 to 1812, Napoleon pretty much dominated Europe. 1914 to 1920, World War I. What came out of World War I? 3 empires collapsed: the Ottoman, the Prussian, and the Austro-Hungarian. And you had the rise of nation states like Yugoslavia, Iraq came in, Syria, all of these. Change happens, and for the most part, you can't control it. But and change in frequency shift will happen for a certain amount of time, and usually what you then start to do is in the aftermath of it, try to figure out what's going on. That's why this frequency shift now, you can only deal with yourselves. Preparing for we have been under a global fiat currency system since 1971, when everybody went off the gold standard. Fiat currencies in history only last about 40 years. We've extended it to...
It's been about 50.
No.
54.
71 to 2016 is 45.
45, I mean.
45 years.
Sorry.
Okay, so but the only reason that's happened is because the U.S. has had control of the reserve currency of the world, and they have the military to back it.
Well, and the petrodollar.
And the petrodollar, right. The petrodollar.
They'd be fucked.
But that's going away. Things are changing. And so when things change, what you have to do is go back to basics, i.e., if you don't try to think about what currency is going to survive, you go into gold and silver. Because no matter what happens coming out, then you can transition your gold and silver into the new monetary system and move forward.
Well, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk more about, I know you mentioned the euro and where that's going, which is basically away, most likely. And also, speaking of gold, there's a couple stories that you had about gold with China and their pricing of gold. Also, coal, getting gold from coal. So we'll talk about that and other stories when we get back with Ken Schortgen of the Daily Economist. And again, you can find him on YouTube as well at Ken Schortgen. So we'll be right back after this. NonPartisanLibertyForall.com.
The end of cash is near. We've covered this before here at PFT, and in a nutshell, it's basically a problem reaction solution analysis. They nationalized the monetary system, which is a huge problem. We reacted by demanding more statism, which perpetuated the problem and now has created the proposed solution, which is a cashless society. But how are they going to justify banning cash? I mean, perhaps the next crash in the business cycle is going to be blamed on hoarding stockpiles of cash. We know the big banks and corporations are sitting on cash reserves, and the social justice, environmentalist, eugenics, leftist crowd are likely going to welcome a confiscation of this wealth. In fact, the move to a cashless society is really just one large step towards actual communism. Now, the central banks should not be setting interest rates at ridiculously low levels. It discourages savings and it encourages debt creation. And as we can see in Canada, or the US, or Japan, or Europe, this method of economic growth is really just asset inflation, which leads to recessions and ultimately depression. So their solution is lower interest rates until they're at zero. And then it's negative interest rates. We basically already have that here in Canada. I mean, just ask yourself if your bank or your credit union charges you more each month than you receive in interest. Now, historically, when governments mess around with the economy like this, people respond by hoarding their money. Now, if that money is paper, governments then respond by creating massive inflation and thereby forcing people to spend their money before it becomes completely worthless. Now, it doesn't necessarily quite work like that in our system today, so central banks are now responding by literally eliminating cash. The government wants all cash in the banks, so every transaction can be monitored, regulated, and completely controlled. Imagine the entire world recorded in one giant online ledger, controlled and monitored by a hierarchy of technocrats and self-serving bankers. Eliminating cash may happen after one of the next financial crises. I mean, bailouts have proven to be unpopular, so now there's even talks of bail-ins. We've covered this here before on PFT with Cyprus and the Canadian connection. You see, a bail-in means that when a bank fails, it will reach into its depositors' accounts before accepting any money from taxpayers. And to keep fiat money in the banking system where the state can get to it, some economists have advocating banning cash. And some countries have already done so. Italy made cash transactions over 1,000 illegal. Switzerland is proposing banning cash payments in excess of 100,000. Russia banned cash transactions over 10,000. Spain banned cash transactions over 2,500, and Mexico made cash payments of more than 200,000 pesos illegal. Uruguay banned cash transactions over 5,000, and France made cash transactions over 1,000 illegal, down from the previous limit of 3,000. Denmark has also made moves towards a cashless society. They're not part of the euro, and they have their own currency called the krone. And the Danish government is proposing to scrap cash as a cost-saving measure. Even a member of German Council's economic experts is calling for a cashless society. He said it would be a good subject for the agenda of the G7 summit. And as for Canada, we're already well onto that road. An RBS report from 2011 found that the world average for paying by plastic amounted to 40% of transactions. But the rate in Canada was 68%, making us the world leader in people who are voluntarily going cashless. We also don't have a penny anymore, so the precedent has been set to get rid of nickels and quarters. And, I mean, how far is this cost-saving measure argument going to reach? I mean, perhaps we better just get rid of all coins and all paper money to stop the drug dealers and the terrorists. The Royal Canadian Mint has actually looked into digital currencies, and although they later abandoned the project when it became clear that the state is not going to be able to duplicate Bitcoin. In fact, the whole point of the Bitcoin scheme is that it is independent from state involvement. Canada's Interact system is the world leader in digital fiat transaction systems. You can pay by debit card at a cash register or pay user fees at a bank machine. In the U.S., these kinds of transaction systems would be owned by the banks, and they usually charge fees on customers or impose cost on retailers. But the not-for-profit Canadian Interact costs so little that it overtook cash as the Canadian standard. A PayPal survey found that 71% of Canadians are ready to go cashless. And an RBC Shoppers Drug Mart poll found that 76% of Canadian women typically carry less than $50 on them, compared to 66% of men. And as Wayne Bossert, former executive vice president of RBC, says, we are increasingly becoming a cashless society. Canadians are recognizing that debit is a convenient way to pay, and now they can earn reward points on debit purchases that translate into savings. Reward points on debit cards, as in like air miles and PC or shopper points, and all those other fake numbers that translate into cheaper groceries or movie theater tickets or whatever. You see, these fake reward points are not savings at all. They're just tokens in a phony economy where goods and services are provided by the corporate state apparatus. As the Canadian Bankers Association works on a unified, standardized system for smartphone payments in Canada, something that is likely going to evolve into a Interact for smartphones, analysts are all agreeing that within just a few years, our smartphones are going to be completely merged with our wallets. And I mean, greater advancements in technology are generally welcomed with open arms. Being able to pay for goods and services with your phone is a temptation that I don't think too many people are going to decline. You know, it's that classic problem reaction solution method that we've come to expect from the American elites. Their solution to the stock market crash in the early 2000s was to lower interest rates and thereby creating another problem. And the masses reacted to the bust in 2008 and 9, and the solution provided was more government intervention and even lower interest rates. And now the Fed is stuck at zero and quantitative easing just to keep everything afloat. But floating on what? I mean, the dollar's value is determined by a cartel of bankers and people's willingness to keep the casino going. The solution the elites provide in Canada and the U.S. is devaluing the currency, keeping interest rates low, and in effect wiping out the pensions and the retirement savings of the elderly, to name at least one group that's being affected. Everyone sees the effect of a nationalized monetary system when we go to the grocery store. Now, what will bring about this North American Union, according to the elites, is the breakdown of this system. Only then will there be any justification for locking our cash inside the electronic banking system. Goods and services will increasingly become rationed, not according to some free market pricing system, but the central planning grid of the authorities. And when money has become completely electronic, that is just nothing but numbers on your phone, well, the international banking system will have complete control of money. And they will be able to just debit and credit individual accounts at will. The entire market order will be supplanted, and it will be de facto communism. But hopefully not on my watch. Thanks for watching, folks. Check out the links in the description for all the sources to this video, and click the like button, and also share this information with your friends and family if you found this info useful. And also check out our Investigate Bilderberg t-shirt campaign that we have going on right now. It's a great way to show your support for truly independent media. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to have a lot more videos coming very soon right here at pressfortruth.ca.
When should you shoot a cop? That question, even without an answer, makes most law-abiding taxpayers go into knee-jerk conniptions. The indoctrinated masses all race to see who can be first and loudest to proclaim that it is never okay to forcibly resist law enforcement. In doing so, they also inadvertently demonstrate why so much of human history has been plagued by tyranny and oppression. In an ideal world, cops would do nothing except protect people from thieves and attackers, in which case shooting a cop would never be justified. In the real world, however, far more injustice, violence, torture, theft, and outright murder has been committed in the name of law enforcement than has been committed in spite of it. To get a little perspective, try watching a documentary or two about some of the atrocities committed by the regimes of Stalin or Lenin or Chairman Mao or Hitler or Pol Pot or any number of other tyrants in history. Pause the film when the jackboots are just about to herd innocent people into the cattle cars, or just about to gun them down as they stand on the edge of a ditch, and then ask yourself the question, when should you shoot a cop? Keep in mind the evils of those regimes were committed in the name of law, and as much as the statement may make people cringe, the history of the human race would have been a lot less gruesome if there had been a lot more cop killers around to deal with the state mercenaries of those regimes. Now, people don't mind when you point out the tyranny that has happened in other countries, but most have a hard time viewing their own country, their own government, and their own law enforcers in any sort of objective way. Having been trained to feel a blind loyalty to the ruling class of the particular piece of dirt they live on, also known as patriotism, and having been trained to believe that obedience is a virtue, the idea of forcibly resisting law enforcement is simply unthinkable to many. Literally, they can't even think about it. And humanity has suffered horribly because of it. It is a testament to the effectiveness of authoritarian indoctrination that literally billions of people throughout history have begged and screamed and cried in the face of authoritarian injustice and oppression, but only a tiny fraction have ever actually lifted a finger to try to stop it. Even when people can recognize tyranny and oppression, they still usually talk about working within the system, the same system that's responsible for the tyranny and the oppression. People want to believe that the system will, sooner or later, provide justice. The last thing they want to consider is that they should illegally resist, that if they want to achieve justice, they must become criminals and terrorists, which is what anyone who resists legal injustice is automatically labeled. But history shows all too well that those who fight for freedom and justice almost always do so illegally, i.e., without the permission of the ruling class. If politicians think that they have the right to impose any law they want, and cops have the attitude that as long as it's called law, they will enforce it, what is there to prevent complete tyranny? Not the consciences of the lawmakers or their hired thugs, obviously, and not any election or petition to the politicians. When tyrants define what counts as law, then by definition, it is up to the lawbreakers to combat tyranny. Pick any example of abuse of power, whether it's the fascist so-called war on drugs, the police thuggery that has become so common, the random stops and searches now routinely carried out in the name of security, such as at airports, border checkpoints that aren't even at the border, sobriety checkpoints, and so on, or any other example. Now, ask yourself the uncomfortable question. If it's wrong for cops to do these things, doesn't that imply that the people have a right to resist such actions? And of course, state mercenaries don't take kindly to being resisted, even non-violently. If you question their right to detain you, interrogate you, search you, invade your home, and so on, you are very likely to be tasered, physically assaulted, kidnapped, put in a cage, or shot. If a cop decides to treat you like livestock, whether he does it legally or not, you will usually have only two options: submit or kill the cop. You can't resist a cop just a little and get away with it. He will always call in more of his fellow gang members until you are subdued or dead. Basic logic dictates that you either have an obligation to let law enforcers have their way with you, or you have the right to stop them from doing so.
Let's go. Inside. Police. I said open up.
need a little late.
This is an emergency. May we come in?
I'm not really dressed.
It's okay. We're police officers.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. And we are back. We are here as we are every other Wednesday with Ken Schortgen of the Daily Economist. And you can find him at dailyeconomist.com as well as on YouTube at Ken Schortgen. So before we went to break, we were talking about, we started to get a little into gold as we were talking about the cashless society and what was going on in India and what is going on in Europe with a lot of changes going on. But from what I understand, and part of this is from the changes that you were talking about, is that the euro is, it sounded like from what you were talking about on one of your podcasts, that the euro is close to collapsing, and if these other countries leave, that might be the end of the euro.
Yeah, the euro at its height was at about 145. It took $1.45 to equal €1, and that was back in 2000. Probably 11 or 12. But then it started taking a nosedive as the dollar started getting stronger. But ever since the Trump election, the day after, the dollar has skyrocketed over 101 and is nearly touching 102 on the index. And what it has caused is the euro to decline to, it actually hit a 104 handle, which means it went into like 104. 82 on the FX currency exchange, and if it gets to be parity 1-to-1, that will be the first time that the euro and the dollar were equal since just right after 1999 when the euro came in. And already this year, there have been two financiers who have. One was the co-architect of the euro currency back in '99. Who have said that the euro is on its way out. It's a flawed currency. It's going to go. Well, Britain.
Well, they're all fucking flawed, but
yeah. But the Britain accepted the euro, but they never used the euro. They didn't get rid of the British pound and go into the euro.
Right? Yeah, they were smart.
When they joined in.
They were smart with that. That leads me to another question because, of course, government media is saying it's funny. I heard this today. And I can't remember where I heard it, but they're saying that Trump is inheriting a good economy. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, they kept saying it was a good economy for Obama. But we can't trust the mainstream media anymore. They're the real fake news.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's obvious to me. It's been obvious for I don't know how long, maybe decades now. I mean, but they're pushing this. My point being that they're pushing this bullshit that the economy is good, and they did it throughout Obama's presidency towards not at first, but towards the middle, and the economy is getting better. But you only see that in the stock market. So is that something that they're using to point to the economy getting better, that look at the strength of the dollar, that means, or they just the stock market went up as well.
Right.
Of course, when you talk about normal people, you know, people are still out of work, people are still underemployed. We see inflation. And the one thing that we never really went into, I know we've mentioned it before, but inflation is a hidden tax. I mean, that's what it is, because you think about it, okay, if they want to generate money, they can tax people or they can print money. And printing money is taking the place of taxing people. So it's going to have that effect where things are going to go up.
Well, I agree. And the reason we haven't seen massive inflation, we've just seen trickle, you know, inflation's happened.
Well, because we pushed it offshore, right? Because all these other countries got a hold.
Part of it's keeping it offshore, and the other part was we kept it above the general economy. When the Fed gave all this money to the banks
didn't give it out.
Right. They kept it in the paper, in derivatives, in the stocks, in bonds, and things like that.
They weren't lending. So if they were lending it out, right? Because I know we talked about this before. That's how I know. But if they lended it out, that would have caused inflation. But being that they didn't, and they did what they did with it, the stock market and so forth.
The one thing that's missing is velocity of money. Okay, velocity of money since the Fed started doing QE is at lowest levels, you know, historic low levels. And what velocity of money means is that money gets put into the general economy and it gets spent and cycled around. The example I always used was you get your paycheck and you want to get tires for your car. So you take your you take your money and you go buy tires. Then the guy who owns the tire shop needs to buy groceries. So he takes the money that he got from you from buying tires and goes buy groceries. The guy with the groceries has to pay rent, so he pays rent. So that single dollar that came from your paycheck hit 3 or 4 different places in the span of, say, a day or two. That's the velocity of money. When you have velocity of money going all around and there's a huge expansion of it, then you start getting price inflation, because the more dollars that are out there, the people are going to buy things up, and the demand's going to be greater. And with the supply shrinking, it's going to raise prices because, you know, supply and demand.
Well, you also have that if the money's lent out, they can lend, you know, they only have to have 10% of what they loan out. So they're creating a whole bunch of more money as well.
Right, exactly. And that's something that why they desperately, you know, another reason, it's a nefarious reason why they want to go digital, because they know that when things start getting rough, what are people going to do?
Well, they're going to take that money out of the fucking banks.
There you go.
I mean,
in a digital
I've already done that, and it's in a, you know, safe deposit boxes and shit like that. So I'm way ahead of them. I mean, I've been done with banks for years.
You, me, and anybody who's been paying attention. But for the vast majority of people, you know what?
Right, they don't even think about it.
Right, and so because it's too convenient. See, it goes back to the responsibility of things. If you want to be prepared and you want to be informed and you want to be this, it takes a little bit of work. Most people don't want to do a little bit of work.
It's really not that much work to not keep your money in the bank. I'm not going to go into the details because I'm not going to say
but maybe
the place I have it at and whatever.
They need to pay their insurance or their rent, and they write a check, or they use PayPal, or
you can do that through so like online banking. I use online banking, right? So I only keep enough money in my account to pay my bills, which I'm sure you probably do a similar thing. You know, you keep enough money in your account to pay your bills. So I pay everything online. I don't even buy checks, because say I wanted to send you a check, I can just put your name in my online banking, and they'll send you a check. I don't have to even write out a check and send it to you. My bank will do it.
Oh, exactly. And you see, digital money and online banking, that's not in itself is not a bad thing. Okay, the reason that so many people have credit cards and debit cards and don't use cash as much anymore is because deep down they know that if at any time they can go to the bank and get all the cash out. Okay, they might not necessarily do it, but they at least know in the back of their mind they can do it.
Well, they think.
If you go digital,
you get flagged too. What is it like? I think it's over $10,000, but it's probably less.
Oh,
that they flag you.
Less.
So
yeah, in many cases it's less. You know, one time I had money in the bank and I went and bought I can't remember if it was a car from somebody, a private thing, and he wanted a cash transaction. So I went in and got $7,000 or whatever out of my bank, and they just questioned me up and down. So because the government likes to track, and the banks don't necessarily do this because they want to. They do it because if they don't, then they're going to get fined. And they're going to have audits, and they're going to have the government up their rears. So, a lot of people, of course, all we see are the frontline tellers, and the frontline tellers don't know anything. They're just the ones who have to be the, ones who deal with us bitter people who are tired of government and capital controls.
And waiting in fucking line.
But what you were saying about the economy, this is important. I wrote this article actually today. It's actually beginning to look a lot like 2007, right before the housing bubble crashed. There were three key things that were occurring right before the housing bubble crash. One, there was an article or a report that came out today. Home prices on average are back to their peak levels that we saw back in 2006.
Sorry, say that again?
Home prices right now are back to where it was at the peak level of the housing bubble in 2006.
Oh, no.
So home prices have...
You're sure about that?
On average.
Okay. Because in a place like Las Vegas, and I'd like to go back and look at my old townhouse, because I had mentioned this before, and I had mentioned this to you, that I sold it or I bought it for $262, and I just declared bankruptcy, and then it ended up being sold for $80,000. But I doubt if I went and looked it up now that it's worth fucking $262. But I know you're saying on average. Part of that is in what they did I think they did it in Phoenix as well, because the fastest growing cities, the cities that were affected the most, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Orlando, the venture capitalists bought up all the fucking houses. They manipulated the price and basically outbid people. And then the foreclosures, they foreclosed very slowly. So I moved out of my townhouse, and it took them like another year to foreclose on it. So they set it up to jack up the prices. So I know they went up, but if they went back up to 2006, that's, I mean,
on average, the average home price, not everybody recovered, but places like New York and Houston and that, they right now they surpassed what it was in 2006. So like I said, it's a national average. But the point is that home prices have risen up back to where it was peak level 2000. I mean, think about it. The stock market's now even greater than it was in 2008. The height of the stock market crash.
Yeah, but that's because of the Fed, right? And all the money that they're giving to the banks and that they're putting into it.
We just talked about inflation. Price inflation for normal goods has not gone up as much, but asset prices,
so
like
you're saying
stocks,
that the house that on homes, that part of that price increase is inflation?
Yes.
For the hell of it, I'm going to look up what my old townhouse is worth.
Okay.
But go ahead.
While you're doing that, I'll do it. The other thing that was right there at the precipice of the housing bubble bursting was consumer debt. People had maxed out their credit cards. They had maxed out their home equity loans. They all had boats, new trucks, and all this thing. Okay. Right now, the quarterly report on household debt and credit came out from the New York Fed. Right now, not counting mortgages, okay, not counting mortgage debt. We're talking about student loans, car loans, credit card debt, things like that. Right now, total household debt is at $12.35 trillion. Last quarter alone, it rose by $63 billion.
Okay, just not to interrupt, but so I'm looking at, because it was a townhouse community, not my specific house, although I just remembered the number, but another model. One, yeah, and on Zillow, so they give their Zestimate, is 182, but that's still a lot. It went up a lot.
Right. 100,000 over the last few years since then, but it's less than that. So you can see that it's not going to be exact in everywhere.
Right.
But the average overall, I mean, think about it.
Well, Las Vegas was, like I said, was hit really hard compared to a lot of places. And like I said, I believe Phoenix was as well, right?
The reason Vegas and Phoenix were hit so hard.
Well, they were one of the fastest growing cities, and they were building and building.
And they were the ones that had so much new construction.
Well, that's what I mean, because they were Orlando as well. You have the cities that kept building because they were growing so fast. They needed more housing, and there was a lot of construction. That's why construction workers, I mean, they really got screwed because construction just stopped. I mean, even on the Strip, if you look at and I know you were here, like 6 months ago or something like that, but I don't know if you've seen where like Stardust used to be. They were going to build a casino there. Still never got built. They had a Fontainebleau on, it's actually right across from the Hilton Grand Vacations building, Circus. And they were almost finished with it. And they stopped construction because of this. So, I mean, it even went to that point where it wasn't just, houses. They stopped with casinos. Well, the Fontainebleau, I don't think was going to be a casino. It's just going to be a hotel. But with Stardust, whatever they were going to replace it with, that never got built neither. So, yeah, Las Vegas got hit hard because they kept building and building and building. But then, as I said, you had, and this is what fucking pisses me off, because what you have basically is you have these companies that were part of it from beginning to end and made money off every aspect of it and helped control everything that was happening. So,
sure.
At the end,
that's what you get with cheap money. See, that's what happened during the dot-com bubble was tied to the lowering of interest rates by Greenspan in Bill Clinton's thing. But Greenspan was also for the first part of George Bush's administration. And they ended up lowering the interest rates after 9/11 to try to stimulate the economy, get out of the recession, and it led to the housing bubble. That was the thing that they replaced the dot-com bubble with, was the housing bubble. So interest rate lowering was done. And then what happened is Greenspan at least had the cojones to start raising interest rates from 1% to about 4%. That was the trigger for the housing bubble crash.
You got to be, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you got to be fucking kidding me. So the one I found for the most, because again, it's a community, was 200,000. It's like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And actually 201. And that shit is I think that the majority of that, and I know you mentioned inflation being part of it, but it's because you had these fucking companies come in and buy up all the fucking inventory, and they would outbid. So if you're somebody buying a house, right, they have unlimited money. They can obviously outbid you. So they bought up so much inventory together with the foreclosures being released. So basically they controlled the supply and demand. Well, at least the supply. So they set it up where they limited the supply, and, there was demand anyway. So they were able to up the prices. I mean, I don't know how much of it is from inflation, but at least a major part of it is from that. And again, these are some of the same companies who are involved in every aspect of this. So they make money off selling the bullshit loans and then selling them off. Then the derivatives, where they knew they were bad loans, they sold off the bad loans and, of course, bet against them because they knew they were bad. And then they bought up all this fucking inventory. People couldn't buy houses because they would outbid them. And then they made it's fucked up. And like I said,
let me give you on the price rise. Okay, you showed the ones here. I'm looking at Zillow for my mom's house. Okay,
and it's in Phoenix, or
it's in Goodyear,
the Phoenix
which
area.
is a suburb. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Phoenix metro area. Zillow has the price going up $2,800 in the last 30 days.
See, that's not.
That's what I'm saying. The bubble is reaching peak point.
So
the average overall of houses across the country are at the range at the peak of the 2006 year,
right?
Which
or at least close to it.
Just a few months later, into early 2007, the bubble cracked. Now, getting onto
just to step back for a second. So if they're at the peak, or I mean, I think maybe maybe they'll go up a little more. Maybe they're close to the peak or whatever. But at what point they're gonna crash again? And that's what I've been waiting for. Not that I want shit to crash, but these are not the real value, because the exact fucking same thing happened again. Because this is not the real value of these houses, because the value of what they were before was inflated value. It wasn't the real value.
Well, that's what I was saying before. The reason that the prices get inflated is because supply is down. Why is supply down?
Which they controlled.
Now, not all the money, of course, went to,
at least in Vegas. I can't speak for Orlando as well.
But Vegas is a unique bird. Okay?
Yeah, but Orlando as well, it was the same thing, because the company, and I'm not going to say where I work, but the company that owns my company did the same shit in Orlando. They bought up all the fucking houses. So, and they weren't the only ones. It wasn't just one company.
Places like BlackRock. They would go to auctions, and they would go to the foreclosures, and they would buy up hundreds in every housing area, and then they would use them as rentals.
Right, and that's what they're doing now. And you know what? In a way, and this is more of a conspiracy theory type thing, I almost think that it's a way to control people's housing, because if you can't buy a house and you have to rent. And, there's been cases with this. Technically, you don't own the house. So do the police or the government really have the right to just enter your house if they have permission from the owner?
Well, that's a great legal thing. But in reality, if you have a mortgage, you don't own your house.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if you that's a good point. Well, you really don't own your house anyway because of property taxes. But,
as long as you pay property taxes.
But I'm saying that if you're renting, that it's like more control to over people, that they have to rent almost now because the supply. I mean, it's almost impossible to buy a house.
Just remember this, okay? Home ownership right now is at its lowest level since about the mid-1950s, 64.3%. Before the 1950s, the home ownership rate
everybody
was
owned a house.
No. When they started owning houses was after World War II, when the GI Bill and the VA loan came in. That's when all the big suburbia got built, because they could borrow guaranteed from the thing. Before then, if you take a look in like New York at the 1910, 1920s, 1930s, Everybody rented.
Oh, I was thinking more like the 60s, like when the 60s,
but that's what I'm saying is homeownership right now is 64.5%, which goes back to the 1950s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's bad.
So it's not as bad as it ever was. I mean, homeownership in about the early 1900s, especially with all the immigrants coming in, was around 35%. So, renting was mostly the thing. People couldn't afford to buy a house. Right. It was only after the government started the VA loans, and guess what? That's when homes started starting to climb. But here, there's a third part I want to touch on this about why we're looking at just before the housing bubble. The other was interest rates were beginning to rise. Remember how I said Greenspan raised rates in about 2004, 2005? Over time, a quarter point every cycle till it got to 4%. Right now, the Fed has not raised rates since last December, and it was just a quarter point.
We talked about it. It's only been a quarter a point in I don't know how many years, since 2008, right?
But ever since the dollar shot up, and Donald Trump got in office, the bond market has crashed. And what that means by crash is that if people want to buy bonds, then the yield, your return is much lower. If people aren't buying bonds, then the yield goes up because they're trying to stimulate interest through demand. The 30-year has gone up so much, and the 10-year, that interest rates now mortgage rates are above 4%. They haven't been above 4% since 2006, the height of the housing bubble. So it's been a decade since mortgage rates were at 4%. What does this mean? This means that fewer people are actually going in to buy a house. How can you afford to buy homes at peak prices at a higher interest rate? You can't afford the payments. Right. The second thing because as mortgage rates go over 4%, fewer and fewer people are refinancing. And when you're not refinancing, then all of a sudden, if you have these adjustable rate loans, guess what? They're going to start climbing. And if you barely can afford your home payment, now you're going to do it. These three factors: subprime loan defaults, massive consumer debt, peak price, and rising interest rates.
You're talking about why things crashed in 2008.
Yeah,
right.
2007. The housing bubble was 2007. The stock market was 2008. The Great Recession was 2009 and 10. Everything is set up exactly as it was just a couple, 2-3 months before the housing bubble crash of early 2007. So that's something big to look at when you were saying that everybody wants to say, the mainstream media wants to say how great the economy is.
Right. It's not.
Not a chance.
It's a false, like I said, I mean, it's the whole thing of all these houses being bought is fake because it's not actual people buying houses. It's companies with unlimited amount of money and venture capitalists buying up all the houses. You got to
remember too, a lot of the home buying that took place over the last 2 years has been foreigners. The Chinese needed to get out of the yuan, so what did they do? They bought property in Canada. They bought property in the Northwest. Russians wanted to gather money, so they bought tons of real estate in London, booming that housing bubble.
Were you talking about Russian companies or Russian?
No, Russians.
Just
Russian
families,
oligarchs,
people.
billionaires.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So at what point do you see it crashing, or because these companies, as long as they hold on to them, will it?
Once interest rates get to a certain point, the housing starts and the housing purchases come to a dead standstill. And then if nobody's buying houses, what has happened to prices? Prices crash,
right.
And you have the bursting of the housing bubble. So, and then, of course, what happened in 2008, the movie The Big Short, you had all of those mortgage-backed securities, which they still have and they've still been doing.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Those go to 8% defaults, they crash.
And then the banks get bailed out again, except it's a bail-in, and they take all your money from the bank.
Because of all the millennials and their student loans, they're not buying houses. That's another reason why.
I haven't bought another house, because I was waiting for things. I just knew things were going to crash again, because based on all of them rigging the market by these companies buying all the houses, it's not a true market to me. It's just like you could take any product, and if like I remember when I was a kid in Little League and we sold candy bars or whatever, and it's like, my mom would end up buying the whole fucking box of candy bars because we'd eat them all. It's almost like the same thing on a of course a much bigger level, but it's not a true supply and demand, and that people are actually, you don't know what the real supply and demand is. You don't have actual people that are living in these houses buying them. You just have somebody coming in and buying a bunch of, swooping all these up and buying a bunch of houses. That's gonna push the price up. And
you got to remember, one of the investment vehicles that's out there right now that actually a lot of fixed income, retirees use, is called a REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. Okay, this is almost like an annuity, only it's backed instead of annuities are usually backed by insurance. Okay, it's almost like you're buying an insurance policy or you're investing in insurance companies and this, that. A REIT invests in real estate property. So when the REITs came around, a lot of retirees took their fixed income because they were getting no return on CDs or bonds. So they went into real estate. And that's where you get these investment firms like BlackRock and a number of others. They took the money from the retirees and their fixed income.
You mean Blackstone?
Blackstone. Yeah, BlackRock. BlackRock is one. Blackstone is another. But they took all that money from the fixed income retirees who decided not to get back in the stock market. They were getting no return on bonds. So they put it with these hedge funds. And the hedge funds took that money and they went out and bought property by the thousands. And those properties are backed, the rents and all that. Those are what pay the REITs, and these are what pay the retirees. So it's not just some corporate, evil head guy. They're managing the money for a bunch of retirees and fixed income people who, before this would have had their money in treasuries getting 3 or 4%. And since they can't get that anymore, they invest as a bulk in these real estate investment trusts.
Yeah, but still, a bunch of other people get screwed over. So I know we have limited time, but you
want me to go over two things with gold real quick?
Yeah, I know there was with China and the what they're doing with the gold price, and then
look
gold
on your
from coal.
Look on your Skype chat. You see the graphic that I put out there: liberalism, conservatives, whatever. Right above that's a link to Kitco Gold London Fix. Go ahead and click on that and open it up so you can follow what I'm showing you.
Okay.
Let me know when you got it up.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. You see where it says historical London fixed prices?
Yep.
On the Kitco? Okay. The first one down on the left. These are the daily fixes. There's an AM fix and a PM fix where they set the price.
Are these the same as the COMEX?
Yes.
Okay.
The COMEX and London London Gold Fix and COMEX are the same.
Okay.
Paper spot price. You see the price for AM 1187, and then of course tonight 1178. Yeah, now this is the important thing because
it's gone down.
Asia. Yeah, the price.
Silver's gone way fucking back down to 16.67.
They slammed it today because the dollar got shot up thanks to OPEC. OPEC made a deal with oil. Oil prices shot up. The dollar shot up. Gold and silver got. It's a paper market. Don't worry about that. It has nothing to do with the physical anymore.
Well, no, I'm happy because I need to buy more silver and gold. So I want it to go down for now.
Exactly. And if you got a stronger dollar, remember this. A stronger dollar means more purchasing power for what you buy domestically.
Right.
Not in the trade deficit, but what you buy domestically. This is why I wrote an article about Thanksgiving dinner, and the price of Thanksgiving dinner actually went down like 38 cents from last year.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned that in your podcast.
Anyway, take a look at the gold fix. We'll do the PM one. Now, remember, these are opposite because Shanghai opens up about 4 hours after the U.S. closes. So they're approximately thinking 1178 is the evening price, the PM price. Okay, now go over to the right. You see where it shows palladium?
I clicked on the fuck, I gotta go back.
Or click here for Shanghai gold fixed price.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, click on that. Okay, so we got 1178 from London. Now take a look at the AM.
It's doing it as a gram. So let me go to.
Yeah, change it to ounces.
Ounce. What's that? Eight fucking dot. Well, that's in Chinese yuan. So does it give it a U.S. dollar? Okay.
Change it to U.S. dollar.
Yeah, it's 1188. So it's a difference of $10.
$10. Earlier today, yesterday's fix, it hadn't updated from the London morning fix, from the evening PM fix from yesterday. The spread was $27.
Are they only doing gold, or are they doing silver as well?
It's primarily gold. It's the Shanghai Gold Exchange. They're eventually going to get into silver, and they do silver, but they don't set a price fix for it.
They just go by the COMEX?
Correct. But no, they don't even do the COMEX. They set their own price fix. But what has happened is the spread. The spread is $10. The spread has actually been as high as $30 over the course of the last 2 weeks. What this means is, at a certain point, it's going to be affordable, more affordable for miners around the world to, instead of sending it to London, the LBMA, or the COMEX, and getting paid for their wares, it's going to be affordable for them to simply put it on a ship and send it over to Shanghai,
China.
Yeah,
and sell it to them.
Exactly, and get the higher price. If they do that, then there's going to be no supply going to London or to New York.
So everyone will have to start buying from China.
And the paper markets will disappear.
Based on their price, right?
Right, because how can you have a futures market if you don't have anything you're actually selling?
How far away is that?
That's going to be the great question, because
we had talked about this last year, and we knew it was happening, and that
it hadn't. See, in October of last year, they opened up the Shanghai Gold Exchange for business. In April of this year, they started a price fix. But the price fix they were keeping pretty much the same as London. It's only been over the last 2 weeks that the price fix is different between $5 and at one point it was $30.
So prior to that, they just took whatever.
It was less than $1 difference.
Okay.
in the two fixes. But that's not enough to create arbitrage. What happens is when this price gets wide enough, the spread gets wide enough, then what investors will do, they'll buy millions of contracts or millions of ounces in contracts at the COMEX. They'll demand physical delivery, which the COMEX can't do because they don't have the gold, just so they could take that gold then
and
to
exchange
Shanghai
it to
and sell
difference.
it,
Yeah.
and exactly an arbitrage. So, yeah, you got an MBA, you should know what arbitrage is. So that's what we're waiting for. That price thing where all of a sudden the arbitrage kicks, all the gold in the West gets shipped over to the East, and then the paper markets just dissipate and disappear from that. There's also an interesting thing I heard on an interview earlier today, from a well-established analyst in the gold and silver markets. You know how Trump was throughout his entire campaign was saying we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Well, you remember also that Trump went down and visited the president.
Yeah, I thought he talked to. Well, yeah, he talked to the president of Mexico, but I thought he talked to the former president too. But I think it was a former president who was like, "Fuck you, we're not paying for it." Vicente Fox.
Vicente Fox. Vicente Fox. His brother is part of the cartel, so
what?
He's a paid establishment guy. He doesn't want Trump, and he doesn't want the wall. Anyway, here's the thing.
Yeah, and I doubt he wants drugs to be legal too.
Exactly. Now here's the thing. Which country has the most silver underground in the world?
Well, I bet you're going to say Mexico. Yeah,
Mexico has enormous reserves of silver. Now,
and silver is the difference between gold and silver that we've talked about before is silver is used in the production of a lot of things, whereas gold pretty much is just jewelry. And there was an iPhone that wasn't an iPhone or an iWatch, or it totally tanked and they took it off. They stopped selling it, right?
Well, what ended up happening is there was a shortage of silver, industrial silver to purchase. So Apple was like 2 weeks behind on production,
and because they couldn't get a hold of silver.
But here's the other thing: China's pushing for solar panels. Every solar panel requires 2/3 of an ounce of silver. Imagine what China's going to do if they put their entire country, mostly solar power, to replace all the coal that's polluted their systems. But here's the kicker, okay? Mexico has all this silver. What if Trump, and this is what I've heard from this analyst, that the rumors coming out is that Trump has told the president of Mexico that he's going to go after the cartel that creates this manipulation of the silver price. Because historically, silver should be a 10-to-1. For every 1 ounce of gold, there's about 10 ounces of silver that's mined in the world. That's the relation.
Well, that would put it at like $100.
Yeah, at least $100.
Yeah, like 110.
Right, and what would happen with all the silver reserves? All of a sudden, if silver was $100, $200, $500 an ounce, Mexico would be the richest country in the world. So, if Trump, like I said, this is all rumor and speculation at this point.
Yeah.
But if Trump was able to go after the COMEX and LBMA and start jailing and stopping the manipulation of the metal prices, don't you think that Mexico would be more than happy to build a wall or pay for it if all of a sudden Trump has just made them the richest country in the world? Like I said, this is rumor and speculation.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
This is coming from an analyst,
depending on what he.
By the way, the real reason that he said that Mexico would pay for it is because
he's an arrogant ass.
No. Right now, the trade deficit between Mexico and the U.S. is something like
I understand that, but
$70 billion.
But still,
and if they cut that in half, that money is the U.S.
But that's on the U.S. They don't have to. Import what they import.
Well, they do, because what they're importing is U.S. goods. U.S. factories who move down there selling U.S. goods. Your Nikes, your whatever is being made in Mexico. They're U.S. goods made in Mexico coming back, but of course.
Right, because companies move that's another country where companies move stuff there. Because they don't have to pay people as much.
$1 billion offshore in Ireland because they're a multinational company.
Yeah, but also,
there. They don't have to bring the money back.
He talks all this shit, but what he failed to. Well, actually, I think he did bring this up. But what people in general fail to realize is that the United States has like the highest corporate tax in the world.
Right.
So, what do you expect these companies to do? If you own a corporation, are you gonna fucking pay the highest tax rate in the world just to be in the fucking United States?
But
no.
Did you see what happened yesterday? The big news. All of a sudden, Carrier Air Conditioning, which during the campaign said they were going to move to Mexico, announced today
it's
that they're
what
not going.
1,000 jobs that they saved. Well, I'm sure that he's telling them that he's going to change the corporate tax rate.
Exactly,
but that doesn't mean it's going to happen because he can't do that on his own.
You have a Republican Congress who has these bills already written. They submitted them to Obama. Obama vetoed them. Now they're just going to submit them into Trump, and they're going to do it. So all these things have been trying to be pushed through the last few years. We've just had Odumbo in the office, and nothing got passed. Anyway, the last thing you want to talk about is the Russians.
The gold from coal.
Yeah,
this sounds like the
philosopher's stone,
the opium from fungus, but
no, this is alchemy, baby. Alchemy using science.
Do you know? This is just funny. You had the same picture. You did the article first, but on one of your articles, you used the picture for your alchemist.
Right.
I used the same picture for Ellen's show on Monday, because she did something about alchemy. So I actually just searched for pictures, and out of all the pictures, that's the one I ended up picking. It's just kind of funny that that we ended up with the same picture.
Yep. I mean, it looks like Nostradamus trying to do.
Yeah, it's a cool. Is that how you got it? Did you just go out and search for pictures?
I went out and search. A lot of times when I search for pictures, I always try to look for the source, because I don't want something that's going to come back and they're going to say, oh, it's AP and Getty Images.
Yeah, well, you have to worry more about that than like me. I really don't have to worry about that because no one's gonna, there's not enough people that they're gonna see my. It's just a picture that goes along with the archive of the show, and there's not enough people that even listen to the show to make it an issue. But sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, real quick, researchers from the Russian Academy of Sciences Far East branch say they are building a facility to make gold out of coal. At present, scientists are setting the bar
because diamonds currently are made from.
Yeah, they make
coal.
Russia is the world leader in creating.
Well, how can you?
Diamonds.
Yeah, but diamonds are not an element. Gold is an element, so it's broken down. In the definition of an element, if I remember correctly, and I was into that shit, chemistry and stuff, it's broken down to it's something with the atoms, but it's broken down to its you can't break it down anymore.
Right, but this isn't pure alchemy. This is not transforming something. What they've done is they've created a process that in coal, they've discovered in most of their coal fields, there's minute amounts of gold in the coal. And what they can do is they have a process,
it's like sifting sort of the gold out of the coal.
Yes, exactly.
So, because it made it sound like I was thinking that they were taking coal and somehow turning it into fucking gold. Like, how the fuck would you do that?
Right now, burning a ton of coal yields 1 gram of gold.
But it's because the gold is already mixed in with the coal,
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
And until then,
but
when
it's
you burn
not
the coal, it just dissipates.
It's not all coal then. It's just coal from a certain place where it's mixed. Because not all coal is mixed with gold then, right?
Well, true. Let me see. The discovery of gold lacing in coal is a result of 15 years of study from different fields. So
that in certain areas, exactly, like there's certain areas where there is gold that's mixed in with the coal, but in general, you can't just go to the store and buy a bunch of coal and expect to fucking be able to get gold out of it.
Right, and here's the thing, they're not going to set this process up just like a mass production, but a lot of the industry, just like in China, still uses a lot of coal plants. Russia still uses a lot of coal plants, and here's one. The scientists are planning to test the gold-making equipment in one of the region's boiler houses that runs the factories, and they hope to, let's see here, We use municipal boiler houses to implement our filtering system because they burn between 8 to 10,000 tons a season. That's potentially 10 kilos worth of gold.
Damn.
So the real question is going to be, in the end, especially if the gold price rises, is it economically feasible to do this?
Right.
Well, who knows? If gold suddenly becomes a monetary standard, yeah, it's going to be definitely do that.
Well, yeah, definitely. If that's what happens, but I mean, that's something that I think people have been talking about. Well, not really in the mainstream, but for years, bring back the gold standard, and who knows that will happen, at least in the U.S. Now, I know China, that's what they're trying to do. Whether they're able to do that or not, I guess we'll have to see, and maybe they will. But, I mean, as far as the U.S. being the first to do it, I don't know. I seriously doubt it, but I guess we'll have to see.
We shall see.
Okay. Well, anything else you want to mention briefly before we go?
No, just check out the Daily Economist and for articles, and the YouTube page for podcasts. I do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sometimes I take Fridays off. Author prerogative. And other than that, lots of interesting things coming up. I mean, things are just moving every single day financially, so a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the difference is you get the real story from your articles as opposed to what you get from what I call government media. So that's very important. So
yeah, they've gone from the mainstream media to the old media to now the dead media.
I call them the government media because there was that, you heard that thing, right, where I think even Conan O'Brien did it, where they took like 40 newscasts and they linked them all together and had them all say like the first two lines of the story, and it was all exactly the same. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, the media pretty much does what the government wants it to do. So, all right. Well, thanks again, as always, for joining us. And yep. Ken will be back 2 weeks from today to talk more about what's going on in the economy and geopolitics. And like he said, things are moving fast, so we'll see what's going on. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow at our new time, 6 o'clock. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. As always, I appreciate it. Be sure to check out our website, NonPartisanLibertyForall.com. You can find all our archives, every single one going back to the first show, on Spreaker. And then, of course, there's links to all the other sites where you can find the majority of the archive. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. Have a good night.
But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary.